This is the moment that changes everything in a person's life. Their nearest and dearest, the love of their life, fighting for breath on the floor.
Please help me.
Get on her head, get on her head, get on her head. How long did you find her here?
I don't know.
Did you find her here?
No, she started passing out.
This is Deborah DePinto. She was found unresponsive in the laundry room of a trailer park office in Boulder, Colorado in June 2018. Her husband, Scott Jones, was taken into the other room by the first responders. He was panicking.
This is my everything.
Oh, I understand.
I can't live without her.
Well,
I don't know how to make it without her.
44-year-old Deborah was in a serious condition. She was taken to the nearest hospital, but there she was pronounced dead, and she hadn't died of natural causes. No, this nightmare scenario wasn't just a horrible accident. Here, on the Decoder, there are no accidents. Instead, the investigation following Deborah's death would unearth arguments, threats, and a secret recording, with two young kids caught in the middle of it all. Kids who just lost their beloved mom.
Get away from me!
We had a homicide in Boulder last night. He killed her.
Featuring exclusive Bodycam footage, this is the tragic story of Deborah DePinto. It was June 18, 2018 in Boulder, Colorado. In the foothills of the Rocky Mountains, it's a vibrant city with a lower violent crime rate than average across the U.S. Picturesque and full of culture, some people view it as the ideal place to raise a family. Maybe Deborah and her family had once thought so, but their life in Boulder was about to take a horrible turn.
What do you know right now?
that she fell in there and sounded like something to her neck. Yeah, he was.
She had a what to her neck?
He said that she did like this to her neck, like when she fell. But she fell in the laundry room, and then he started doing CPR on her.
This is what Scott Jones told the officers responding to his 911 call. He said that Deborah had fallen by accident in the laundry room of the office at the mobile home park, where the family had temporarily been staying in a cramped travel trailer. And initially, any story, including this story, could have been the case. In the chaos of first response, the emergency service's first priority is stabilizing a patient in critical condition. They didn't need to know how she got on the ground, only what they could do to save her.
She's my whole life. She's my whole life.
She needs you to be, she can hear you right now, okay? So she needs you to be strong for her, all right? So take a deep breath, okay? The best people that can possibly be working on her, okay? Does she take any opiates or heroin? You don't know? Is there a possibility? Has she ever used them?
All we care about is smokes that damn pipe where they heat up the end and they stick it in that stuff.
The paramedics needed to know if Deborah was a drug user, so they could revive her if this was a possible overdose. Scott, who'd been with his wife for 20 years, said he didn't know. He implied that she smoked some sort of illicit substance, but he didn't know what it was. Maybe this was understandable, in the high stress of the situation, his wife being resuscitated in the other room. But it didn't help. Deborah was transported to the hospital. There she was declared dead. Out of the reach of medical help, it was now the police's turn to do something for her, to determine why and how she died. The couple had 2 children, a daughter Mary and a son. The son was only 10. Both kids had been there in the trailer park on June 18th, and so the cops faced the harrowing task of interviewing the newly motherless children. First, they talked to Mary.
What was going on today?
They were just kind of like arguing a little bit.
What were they arguing about?
I don't know.
Okay. Do they normally argue?
Mary painted a troubling picture of her parents' marriage. It was already bad enough to have argued with your spouse on the last day of their life, but what if it was related to her death?
So they were arguing outside, but do you know what it was about? Was it real serious or just like a normal argument?
Kind of sounded serious.
And though this couple argued frequently, this was worse than usual. The police needed to know more about how this argument had started and what the family's day had looked like before it all went so horribly wrong.
Okay, can you walk me through today, like how you got to this point and then we got called? So where did you wake up today at?
I woke up at my house.
Okay.
And we drove down here.
This gentleman that was just staying here, you all live at that house?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then he dropped us off here and then went to work.
Okay, and so she went to work.
And then after a few hours, she came back here.
Which was about what time?
I think around maybe 4 or 5.
4 to 5 p.m.?
Yeah.
Okay. And then?
Then they were arguing and I went to the car.
Deborah was a chef in food services at the University of Colorado Boulder. A dedicated mom with mouths to feed, she worked a lot, while Scott tended to take care of the kids. She'd left them alone with him while she went out to her shift, not suspecting that she'd never go out to work ever again. She got back in the late afternoon, and that's when she started to fight with Scott. The couple met in 1998 at a New Year's Eve party. Born in 1973, Deborah had just turned 25 when she met Scott, who was 28. They were from opposite ends of the country. Scott was from Dade County, Florida, and had moved to Colorado via North Carolina. Meanwhile, Deborah went to high school in California, but they hit it off right away. They shared a love for horses and the Colorado landscape, and they soon settled down together. Deborah was dedicated to her work as a chef, and she held multiple jobs over their time together, finally settling at the University of Colorado in 2008. Scott, however, had a far more patchy record of employment. His primary role in their family was to look after the kids. They'd recently moved into the trailer park from a place in the mountains, but the move was only temporary, and they'd left their dogs and their horses behind. Maybe this was a benign change of scenery, or maybe it was a clue to deeper troubles threatening their long-standing relationship. There seemed to have been strife between the two for several years. In 2014, Deborah shared a post on Facebook saying, "Relationship status, it's complicated," with the caption, "You ain't kidding." While perhaps this was only a fun meme, it seemed to suggest trouble to come. So the police also talked to the couple's previous neighbors back up in the mountains. They didn't have much good to say about Scott.
He was a stay-at-home.
But they have kids?
They had,
that's right.
They had
Yeah,
two
they did.
kids, and he was kind of a pain in the neck. he had nothing to do but come down and kind of bother us all the time. But she was a very hard-working, good girl who got taken advantage of a lot of, I guess. She, like I said, she really put out to him and his expectations of the relationship.
Which were very strange.
She worked 2 jobs while he didn't work any. And
Deborah was definitely the breadwinner. Had this led to tensions in their relationship? Was this what they'd been arguing that fateful day when she came back from her long, tiring shift? The neighbors pointed the police to someone who might be able to shed more light on their dynamic. One of Scott's old friends from high school, a man named Gardner. Sometimes they worked manual jobs together, but these never lasted long.
On and off, he'd work with me. But he always tends to lose his job because he runs his mouth about things that are going on in his head.
Gardner implied that Scott was a man who lacked impulse control. If he was mad about something, you'd hear about it, and maybe not just hear about it. Was Scott the sort of man to do something violent about it too? The question became most pressing when Gardner talked about the couple's relationship and how they'd apparently been on the brink of splitting up for a long while.
Last time I talked to him was probably 2 weeks, maybe, about 2 weeks before the incident.
So that surprised you? I mean, just kind of curious
yeah,
myself.
Actually it did.
Really?
He was talking about how that was all over and done with, and he was going to move on.
Oh, they had separated.
Yeah,
and that was done. Huh?
He was actually living in the trailer.
At the start of June, according to Gardner, Scott and Deborah had been separated. This was the reason behind the move into the trailer, that Scott was moving out from living with Deborah. But on June 18th, the family had all been in the trailer park together. Had they reconciled, or were they about to reach breaking point? Gardner didn't know.
So the last he said to you about their relationship was they were done, split up, and it was over? And
yeah, and he was...
Never said anything about, I'm going to kill that or nothing like that? Or...
No.
Okay.
Gardner said that Scott had never vocalized any threats to Deborah's life, But this wasn't strictly true. A year earlier, Scott had been talking to one friend when that friend asked him what he'd do if Deborah left him. Clearly, they were having marital troubles even then, and Scott said it wouldn't happen, that he wouldn't let it happen. But what measures would he go to prevent it? He told another friend if she tried to leave him, then I'll whack her over the head and put her in the ground. And only a week before her death, he told someone else that he had friends that owed him favors and could have her taken out. These threats were escalating and becoming more realistic. At the heart of it were Scott's possessive tendencies. Once, when they were separated that same year, she had a casual boyfriend over. When Scott arrived at the house, she told the boyfriend to hide in the armoire. Imagine you were trying to disentangle yourself from a possessive, controlling husband and he came to your house to find you with another man. You'd probably do the same. But the incident suggested that she was afraid of him. This, despite the fact that Scott had their 10-year-old son with him at the time. It seemed she didn't think it mattered whether there was a child present. If Scott was going to hurt her, he'd do it anyway. He knew she was seeing another man. He sent her barrages of text messages, often threatening. In one, he wrote, "God isn't happy with you committing adultery against me." Another said, "If you keep offending me, I will rebuke you just as the Lord will." And, most ominously, a text from Scott that read, "Ain't no cop or restraining order gonna stop what's coming. I don't care what happens to me at all. I am a man with nothing left to lose except my life. Nothing left to lose." He had 2 kids, but they didn't seem to matter to him if he couldn't keep a hold of his wife as well. All signs pointed to a vicious escalation, and Deborah walked right into the path of his jealous rage when she came back from work on June 18th. Their son witnessed the aftermath. Scott ran to him and shouted at him that Deborah wasn't going to make it.
He came in, like, screaming, and he was saying that he thought he was dead. So he brought me into the room, and she was just purple and cold.
Imagine bringing your 10-year-old son into the room where his mom lies dying, or already dead. What kind of father would do that? He was panicking, yes, but there was something more to it. And this would be revealed by something Scott hadn't taken into account when he started the argument with Deborah that day. A string of recent neighborhood thefts had left the owner of the trailer park to fit it with a surveillance system. This included a hidden camera in the trailer park office itself. Whatever had gone down between Scott and Deborah had been caught on camera, and his lies would be revealed.
I thought there was some common sense with you. Well, I thought you knew that you don't remember being in there.
In this secret footage, Scott and Deborah can be seen coming into the trailer park office, clearly in the middle of a heated argument.
He doesn't know. I didn't. So that's why you told me.
They disappear into the laundry room out of view of the camera, but not out of earshot. Deborah was tired from work, tired of fighting with her husband, and just wanted to get her laundry done so she could get out of there. But this wasn't an ordinary argument like all the others.
What are you doing over there? I'm getting one. Get out of here, Miss Common Sense. We're fighting for an hour over nothing. I'm done. We are never going to be together. You're so cruel. Is that all you got, cruel and mean? You're getting my way. Weird. Put it in here. Get out of there. No, whatever. Get away from me. Get away from me.
They had been together for 20 years. Scott had spent at least some of that time trying to control her. And when she told him to get away from her, something snapped. He couldn't leave her in the laundry room.
Oh, don't touch me, Scott. You can't force me to love you anymore. Get out of the... Where's the door? I'm trapped. Get away from me. You make me feel terrible. Get away from the door.
This awful sound was the sound Deborah made when Scott laid his hands on her, when he started to strangle her. Her life partner, the father of her children, attacked her. In a horrible betrayal, it was an attempt at exercising control over her for the final time. Then it was over. and Deborah lay unresponsive on the floor, and Scott realized what he'd done. He spent the next 47 minutes in the laundry room with her, not calling for help, even though the fog of rage must have lifted. No, instead he was planning how he could cover up what he'd done. The plan he settled on? Using his 10-year-old son as a cover story. He went to the boy and told him something had happened to his mom. In this surveillance footage, they can be seen going back into the office together. Perhaps in Scott's twisted imagination, he thought this would exonerate him. Why would he show his son, his murder victim, if he'd killed her? But he had.
He's gone, man. Oh my God. 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 Oh my God.
With Deborah declared dead, the hospital had to work out her cause of death. In an autopsy, the forensic pathologist determined she'd died of homicidal asphyxiation, but the police already suspected foul play. The day of her death, the kids were taken by Child Protective Services, and Scott was brought to the sheriff's department. During his interview, he maintained what he told the first responders, that Deborah had suffered some sort of medical issue.
I don't know, dude. Like, she went like this. She started going like that and stuff.
And even though their kids had witnessed them arguing, he maintained that their relationship was going to be okay.
Any discussions about your relationship, how things are going?
No. I love my wife and she loves me, man. And I have no idea how that went down like that today, dude.
Okay.
When she fell, yeah, she was face down, she fell. Because I'm tired. I want to get my kids home. And I've answered a lot of questions. I've been very cooperative.
Scott still believed that he was going to get away with it, but the officers knew that Deborah's death was suspicious and that Scott had been the only person in that room with her. They dug deeper.
Did something happen in that room that...
No way, man. No way.
I mean, I know accidents happen. If you're arguing, did something happen that went too far? Did she have a heart attack and die?
No, man.
Scott was still denying it. It was later that night that the police department would receive the evidence they needed to confirm what he'd done. The manager of the trailer park rang the police with the secret surveillance footage, and Scott's guilt seemed assured.
I hear him arguing for about 15 minutes, and then right at 7 o'clock, you hear like some screaming, and it just sounds like something bad is happening to her.
Okay.
And then he does not come out of the back 45 minutes.
Okay.
And then when he does, he's saying, oh my God, and he's kind of pacing.
Okay.
And I just got chills up in my spine. I couldn't watch anymore.
They showed this footage to Scott.
That doesn't prove anything, and you know that.
It shows us that something happened in that room. What's going on during that time?
No, man.
But Scott, you do know. This entire time you're still there with her. What are you doing? Are you looking at her? Are you trying to figure out what to do next?
Scott knew they were close to nailing him for the murder. In this interview footage, he can be seen getting increasingly worked up as he knows he's edging closer to being caught, so he asked for his lawyer. But a lawyer isn't a miracle worker. The police had him dead to rights, and the lawyer must have known that, because a few hours later, Scott confessed. And worse, he tried to justify what he'd done.
What happened?
I don't know. You think I am not kicking out of myself? You don't think I feel bad?
Well, I know you were.
Oh man, it wasn't good enough. I'm taking the kids. You ain't taking my kids. Threatening me with me, man. With me. Just couldn't stop being a monster. Just couldn't stop being cruel, man. You don't know what she's done to me. You don't know the cruelty she's done, man. I believe it makes a man temporarily insane for a minute, man, when you think about it. You know that? You don't know the troubles. You don't know the pain. You don't know what I've endured. You don't know what that woman put me through. You don't know what she did to my son. You don't know.
According to outside witnesses, it was Scott who'd made Deborah's life a living hell. But according to Scott, it was the opposite. He made Deborah out to be a cruel person who'd driven him to murder.
But I didn't think anything through. I didn't think about anything. I just reacted. I don't know what happened. I just reacted. I don't know, man. It's nuts.
Scott was charged with murder, and he seemed to accept what he'd done. Perhaps it felt good to get it off his chest. He seemed concerned about his kids most of all, despite what he'd said to Deborah in a text a few weeks earlier that he had nothing to lose.
This is the heat of passion. Good people do bad things sometimes.
I want to see my kids again, man.
Well, I'm not sure.
Think I'll lose them? I don't want to lose them forever.
But he'd killed their mom. There could be no getting them back. When he was being driven away from the police department, he expressed his regrets.
That was me.
That was you. Well,
I took care of them. I was the stay-home. All she did was abuse all of us. For many years. I just couldn't take it anymore. I don't know what else to say. I'm sorry. I never meant for any of this to happen. It was an accident. I didn't believe her anymore. She lies, 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 lies. Never stopped lying. But I wish I could take it back.
But was this regret genuine? A few months later, he made a phone call from prison. These phone calls are recorded, though inmates often forget this fact. Over the phone, he said, "She made it all go down," most likely referring to Deborah. He also wrote a letter to a son he had from a previous relationship, writing, "Now she is in hell. I bet she's a believer now. Oh well, too late. Something tells me Debbie doesn't think I'm a punk, explicative, anymore." The letter ended, "I bet she's sorry for being a lying, cheating, deceitful A. Now I bet she knows I was a good man. Now too late now." This painted a very different picture to his regrets expressed to the officers in the squad car. No, instead he was almost gleeful about what he'd done. His trial took place in December 2019. The defense presented no witnesses, but it still took 10 hours for the jury to come to a verdict. All but one jury members were convinced of his guilt, with one holdout. But the conflict was only between first and second-degree murder. The difference between the two verdicts was whether Scott had planned to kill Deborah or done it on the spur of the moment. The threatening texts and statements to his friends implied the former, though his interviews made it seem that he'd killed her on impulse, and ultimately, the jury were convinced of the latter. They found Scott Jones guilty of second-degree murder, as well as one count of child abuse for bringing his young son into the room to see his dying mom. He was sentenced to 48 years in prison, the maximum sentence allowed for the charge of second-degree murder. He was also sentenced for 1 year on the count of child abuse, and a motion was granted preventing him from having any contact with his and Deborah's kids to protect their mental and emotional well-being. The children are now being raised by Deborah's family out of state, while Scott remains in prison. What do you think about this twisted story? Was it premeditated or not? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Until next time, stay safe, keep up with our channel, and we'll see you very soon on the Decoder.